Hello and welcome back to Beers and Break-Evens. This week we've got the roasting of the Rugby League Guru to wrap up the 2023 season. I'm your host, Tim Williams. Here with me this week to lend me a hand in roasting the Guru, Ryan Selvage, NRL SuperCoach 365. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good to be back. Obviously here last week, you were in the hot seat, but Guru's turn today.
Yeah, you looked after me all right last week, mate, all things considered and rank-wise and whatnot. The Guru, not so much. So, mate, it's a good position to be in down here. Also with us is that man who, he's got some kick in his step, the Roo, and he's also got something else with him. Roo, you're sweating down there.
Back home, eh? 2 years on the trot. How good.
Now,
We're hoping for an early crow? Please.
Yeah, I was. And
Shit in.
Early on, about one game into that round, and the numbers started to go in my favour a little bit. I had a few extra players. Eli Katoa was out. Jack Howarth came in. There was a few other things that happened, and we'll get to the next man very shortly. But firstly, guys, we are brought to you by Blue Wealth Property. Thank you very much to Tony and the team for their support throughout the season. A few events coming up. We do have on the 18th of September, of course, live in Bathurst, Wealth Through Property event. On the 26th of September, Gen Z Education at Sydney Olympic Park. The 28th, we have also at Sydney Olympic Park and via webinar, Wealth Through Property. You can tune into that one. All of these events, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. There will be a link in the YouTube description to that one. And guys, over the off-season, if this isn't relevant to you at the moment, you want to do it later on, you want to get involved in these events, just message Guru or myself and we can sort you out with those. Now, Guru, I'm going to flatter you for a little bit because a very, very small part of me is proud of you for coming home strong. You played with a bit of depth this season. You finished with a bang. And one trade in particular, you finished 1,550th overall in the top 1%. Good stuff, mate. Good stuff.
Thank you.
The big turning point of our head-to-head duel was leading into round 26. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. You were going to follow me into the trade and you're on the podcast and I'm going to do it, risk mitigation, all this sort of shit. And for once in your life, you went out on your own nouse and you went against it. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak came out and scored 25 points that week against the Dragons and then was rested in round 27. The following trade occurred. Tolatau Kola. Now, Kola came out in round 26, went big. Round 27, he had the highest scoring Supercoach score for the entire season against the Tigers. That trade was a 188-point swing. Now, thankfully, you still would have just got me. However, if you did the Dallin Watene-Zelezniak trade, you would have finished 2,950th. So that trade banked you 1,400 spots. Sure
did. It was a big move. You're a bit of a ifs and buts merchant, to be fair, Timmy Williams.
You've got to make excuses somehow, mate.
No, but Kola was a big punt. I think if you have a look at his scores the 3 weeks before that, I think he went over 45 at any point. So moving to fullback, had me very, very excited. You'll be happy to know he might have done very well for me in Classic, but he did end my draft season, which means $1 billion more to me, unfortunately. So It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows. There was a couple of tears and some long nights. Shout out to Stephen Hebner and fuck you. But yeah, it was a big play Classic-wise, and that's why we're sitting here. How good.
2 on the trot, mate. I'm proud of you.
Elephant in the room, Guru. You mentioned your draft now there. You know, I flashback 2 years ago, you were the draft guy and Timmy was the Classic guy, but I think I've seen that the engraving on there says Guru twice, so
I think I'm just the Supercoach guy now.
Very quickly things turn.
You're the Supercoach guy. On the Bloke in the Bar potty, I am toweling up the tipping, the predictions, all that. So we might have to have a rebrand. You're the Supercoach Guru and I'm the Rugby League Guru.
2 weeks in a row for me on Face the Music. Flying at the moment.
Pre-season predictions. How'd you go there, mate?
Not too well. What about Maddie picking our quotes from the weekend, on the other night? Did you go through them?
Yeah, they were great.
You picked one from me from the West Tigers where I pretty much said the Tigers will finish somewhere between 1 and 17. I got absolutely smashed. I'm going, I didn't pick the fucking quote. All the shit I say, and Matty picks that one. Shout out to the water boy.
He only had about 90 hours of content to go through.
Tell me about it. He picked that.
Shout out. You're going to throw stones at glass houses on poor old Matty the water boy. On that same post on Instagram, the Dolphins called me out for potting them at the start of the year again. Thanks, Dolphins. Underneath that, you quote tweeted me saying that the Dolphins will fold by the round 13 or something. And then you keep forgetting that you got about 100,000 followers on Instagram and 90,000 of them think everything you say is true.
Yeah, maybe it was round 10 you said, not 13. Yeah. It was great because I went really hard on the Dolphins. I just didn't go as hard as you did. It was fantastic.
Anyway, you win some, you lose more.
It'd be good to win a few more, though.
It'll be great to win a few more of them. Now, mate, let's get into the roasting of your side for the season. And it's a funny one because we went through mine last week. And as you know, you did get the dub on me, but not too many bad trades. I mentioned about timing for other things. I know you've got a couple of stinkers in yours, so it's going to be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and we spoke about it in your roast last week, obviously, about how I'm very confident I had more bad trades than you. But I think that if we were to put us on a spectrum of Supercoach players, you're probably a little bit safer than what I am. I'm
Definitely
probably take more swings. And I think that what we're going to talk about today is a really good example of if you take 5 swings and you can hit 2 of them, that'll probably put you in front.
Way funner as well.
Heaps fun. It's great. But if you don't hit any of those 5, you're completely butchered and you're in all sorts. But I think that a lot of people in Supercoach do try and just stick to the crowd too often. And there are moments where it is 100% the play, and I did that for a lot of the season. But when you do make your big plays, which I think is probably the draft player coming out of me, that I'm focusing on so many different guys other than just those key classic guys, it can be a big advantage. It can sink you, but it can make you too.
Yeah. Now, look, I won't get too excited about it, but Kohler next season, I think due to no lack of effort from Ruben Garrick, but has succeeded Garrick as the backup fullback at Manly if Tommy Turbo's out. Riser, Kohler becomes a very interesting one next season for round 1 because on what we saw, I know it was against the Tigers and who else they'd demolished, the Dolphins or someone, where he went bonkers the last 2 weeks. Anyway, it's irrelevant. But
he fucking hates the Dolphins.
It's not irrelevant.
Yeah. No, I was trying to think who Manly put a score on in round 26.
Bulldogs into West Tigers. There
you go, Bulldogs. It wasn't a Dolphins song.
Leave
Don't come after me.
Leave the Dolphins alone.
But Cole, Manly next season with Cole, who will start the season pretty cheap, he has to play more of a roving role.
Yeah, you'd think so. And I think unlike a lot of those other fullbacks that we did mention last week, Ponga springs to mind. He's going to lose the duel. I think Kohler will probably keep it. So that could give you an option there and some versatility early doors. I think you say he's ousted Garrick as that second choice fullback. Garrick was so good at right centre when he played there that we probably didn't expect him to be that good. So he could be a victim of his own ability in that sense.
Kohler round 1 next season. People aren't going to forget, namely the Guru, what he did the last 2 weeks.
I'm not convinced he would have jumped in front of Garrick, to be honest with you. I think Garrick, you got to remember last year when Turbo went down until Jersey Gate, Garrick was playing fullback and had them as a top 8 side.
Yeah.
I'm not. I would prefer to see him at fullback, Kohler, because I think he's so wasted at centre. It's not even funny. But I'm not. Isn't it crazy to think? Remember at the start, there was at one point when Turbo was down. Who were they picking at fullback before they?
KO Weeks.
Yeah.
KO Weeks. So Kohler was their 4th.
Still couldn't
fullback.
get a gig.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So I'm not totally convinced he is the next guy up, but Ruben Garrick at centre was very. It's funny though. All these Ruben Garrick moves to centre for that Dolphins game that we watched in Canberra. They win that by 60.
Yeah.
Kohler moves to fullback. They win both those games by 60. I'm not convinced that Kohler's going to be the automatic number 2 guy.
Are we certain that Turbo is still the number 1 fullback?
I think so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. I've seen a lot
of
of chat about it, and I get the argument of if it's injury related and they want to ease him back and get runs under his belt at centre, I'm all for that. Yeah. But once he's good to go, he's the number 1.
Has to be.
But I do know that off the back of the last 2 weeks, Kohler is going to be very highly owned, I believe, next season at his price. And it'll be interesting because if he just sticks in that same centre role and nothing changes, trap. But if he does start roaming and the pre-season trials will be a huge watch, he could be such a good pickup.
I worry that he's the sort of guy, if he's put at right centre, he'll just sit there. I think he could be very frustrating, Kohler, but we'll see.
Shit coaching if he does. He needs to get more involved.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Riser, you have Guru's team from round 1.
I do, and good little segue there from Tommy Turbo. He was Guru's captain in round 1 at fullback. He scored a 97, and he was in second gear that day against the Bulldogs.
Yep.
So at that point of the year, we're thinking, here comes Turbo all over again. Teddy was your other fullback. Centre wingers, AKP, Valentine Holmes, Isaac Tungo, and Sania Taruva. Probably focusing on the draft angle there again. Holmes and Tungo, two names that you're either paying up for or a pod play in the Panthers centre. Speak us through that, I guess, before we go through the rest of it, because he was someone that he burst onto the SuperCoach scene 2022, but his price was probably the detriment getting him from round 1.
Yeah, for sure. I always like to have a few pod players. I talked him up a lot in the preseason as well. I think I moved off him within 2 or 3 weeks. I think that was a classic example of I had a pod, it didn't go perfectly, and I kind of shit myself.
Yep.
I kind of regret doing that. And there's a few guys that I did shit myself on this year and trade them out that I think were the right calls. But I think Isaac Tungo was one, without knowing his scores, this is completely off the dome, he's one that I kind of wish I would have persisted with.
Another one there for you. We say something every year, but you don't see these big outside back and halves scores in the opening 3 to 5 rounds of the season. It takes teams time to get into their stride and start gelling with new combinations, new recruits, before the points start to flow. You add in a few things like there might be some injuries to teams and suspensions fall in. They get a little bit mismatched, and that's when you see the big ones. So it's a good lesson in, being a bit patient with these guys.
For sure, and I think the other thing I didn't anticipate, just thinking back, the Panthers started the season pretty slow. I think they lost to Brisbane week 1. I think we were in Wagga week 2, and they had a close game with South Sydney that was a bit scrappy. So points just weren't there. I still think, I've obviously spoken about Tungo a lot, but I think he's a guy that I will own in Classic quite a bit over the next few years. And
You're 100% starting with him next season.
Yeah, I think I'm a very good shot too.
You will, for sure.
I still think if you look back to 2022, he had an unbelievable season. I had him in draft all year. Mate, he had about 13 tries disallowed.
Do you reckon there's a chance he starts here in the back row?
I don't think so.
No?
Not for me. I think that Hoskins, Scotty Sorensen, they got too many options there. And, mate, he's a premier centre.
Yeah.
Proper premier centre.
All right, we'll keep going.
Just quickly, he averaged 68 this season, 60 in 2022. So you paid up for him a decent amount, 627K at the start of this year. That 68 will prop him up sort of close to 700K. There's not a chance that'll be enough to deter you.
Did his average go up by 8 this year?
Yep.
That's pretty wild, though.
He scored, what do you have? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tries in 14 games.
What do you have the year before? I can buy you some time if you need to look it up. But
while he does that, just on that, like if you think if Tungo's playing those weeks when Peachy was playing, like Peachy was banging out 70s,
Exactly right.
80s, 90s, 100s as well. So his average could have been even closer to 75, 80.
Yeah. Right.
We'll keep going.
I heavily backed him in to score more tries this year than what he did last year.
Right.
He had 12 last year in 23 games.
Yeah, right. Fuck, that's wild.
Good things happening out there at Penrith, and that's probably where you centred this team around. Good thing, maybe an understatement.
Breaking news.
Well, there's a bit going on at Penrith, is there?
Bit of an understatement. Your halfback for round 1 was Nathan Cleary. So you did pay up big bucks from round 1.
Yeah.
He partnered in the halves Kalen Ponga. So again, I think Ponga.
I started with KP, did I?
You did, yeah, round 1.
At 5'8".
I was big on him heading into the draft year. I wanted to get him, and he got picked the pick before me, which kind of rattled the shit out of me. I ended up with him in draft at the end of the day for a trade. But yeah, I was very high on KP. I think I was very high on him because of Jacko Hastings arriving there. I just thought it'd free him up. Even at 5'8", I thought it would still. But yeah, it was a bit of a slow start with him at 6.
Isn't that funny where we sit there and like when you really weigh everything up across the season and like how much he killed me, you started with him, you got injured, cost you a few trades.
Yeah.
So it's like when you bring everything into it, yeah, I forgot you started with him as well.
Your other halves were Adam Dewey and Tanner Boyd backing up at half.
Oh, good God. Fuck. I wouldn't want that to be my Oztag halves. That's grim.
Harsh. He did his job, Tanner Boyd. Wasn't
It took
outstanding.
him too long.
He's a job doer.
Mate, when you think about it, I've got a $10 million salary cap to pick whoever I want from the entire comp. I ended up with Tanner Boyd and Adam Dewey.
Your back rowers, now this is probably where we'll spend a bit of time to start the year. Egan Butcher, Teague Wilton, and I want to take you back to that first Thursday night in round 1. Jaman Hopgood banged out 101. Talk us through, what are you thinking when you see this unfolding in front of your eyes?
I'll tell you what happened that night. That was our first country tour.
Yeah.
And we drove up to Armidale. Drove to Armidale. I drove on my own. Timmy and Maddie drove the van up. And you're a few hours behind me. So
we went to Armidale via Perth.
Yeah, you went all over the joint. I sat in a hotel room on my own watching that entire game, just watching these. I think he was on, he just about based 100, didn't he?
I don't think he scored. He had a whole heap of offloads. I remember that. There was plenty
I
of
was
offloads.
sitting there watching him, and I think he was on like...
He based 81.
Yeah.
And it went to Golden Point as well.
Yeah, it went to Golden Point, went for an extra few minutes, and he played the entire thing, and I just remember sitting there going, this might be my greatest ever. This is fucking unreal. I'll never forget. I made it went fucking bonkers. I made a bit of content that was just Jermaine Hopgood's score with Paul Vaughan going. I remember I was fucking stoked with it. That was a good night.
Room service, can I get another box of tissues, please?
Keep going here. Your other back rowers were Hamoli Olakawatu and David Fafita, so a good mix there of try-scoring, attacking back rowers.
Fuck, Olakawatu was frustrating to start the season. He scored, if you got one of you get up his stats, he scored a try just about every week for the first few weeks and never went above 60 or 70. It was frustrating. He was just scoring tries off kicks and bullshit. It was so frustrating.
Like week 2 against Parramatta, he scored 60 with a double. He had 25 in base.
Yeah, 2 tries off kicks.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Rounding this out, your front rowers, Stefano and Christian Welch, and your hookers, Brandon Smith, Sonny Luke. So you went cheap in hooker, no Harry Grant to start the year.
Yeah, did I ever?
Do you regret that?
You know what, and you can go back and check the tapes from the preseason. I was never keen on Brandon Smith. I never liked it.
Yeah.
But I got dragged into the crowd.
Yeah.
I just thought if he does kill it, I'm going to look like an idiot and it's going to cost me too much. That of all those players, that's my biggest regret because I never liked Brandon Smith at the Roosters from the very start.
I'll give you that. You called that very early.
Yeah, I was never happy with
I was
it.
just trying to find the image of you and Jaman, that glorious moment out at Bankwest Stadium or Combank, whichever the hell the one it is these days.
Yeah. No, the Brandon Smith one sucks.
That was you not backing yourself, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big case of following the crowd. I remember you calling out saying, like, it just seemed like a knockout, like an easy shot to take, no risk, and you followed the crowd.
Yeah, big time. And I think, got a little bit rattled on that one.
Unfortunately,
the crowd followed me on Sonny Luke. Listen to my fucking bullshit preaching, which missed by a country mile. And, Sonny Luke was a tough one this year. Tough one.
So this was your non-scoring players for round 1. This is the way you set up your team. So Sonny Luke was one of them. Franklin Pele was another one. Davy Mawale, Jacob Preston. We've already mentioned Tanner Boyd, Paul Alamotti, Will Warbrick, and Isaac Thompson. So very cheap on your non-playing reserves for round 1.
Those bench CTWs are rogue.
Jeez.
I got to say, round 1, I was driving back from Armidale on my own. It was the afternoon I captained Turbo. He was playing the Canterbury Bulldogs in round 1. Mm-hmm. And I remember I pulled up at a servo, got myself a little snack box, and I was sitting there trying to work out what my last reserve would be. And I remember sitting there going, you know what? I'm going to back T-Rex in here. And I traded in Jacob Preston about 2 minutes before the game started. I want to say he scored a try that day.
He did.
Not in round 1.
Not in round 1.
He didn't.
He had a good game. He scored
one,
like 30
Paul.
round 1,
Yeah,
and
then
then he
came
went
good.
bang, bang.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I remember walking in here at the end of round 1 going, fucking Tim, fucking bullshit. And he killed it after that. So thank you, T-Rex.
Oh, it's all good, mate. Got you.
Good start, though. 97 as captain for Tommy, like we said. From that point onwards, no trades in round 2 and then a boost in round 3. You sacked Brandon Smith. Didn't take you long to get rid of the cheese.
Yep.
Egan Butcher. And funnily enough, Isaac Tungo, he was gone by round 3 as well.
Weak-gutted dog.
I deserve that.
Show some loyalty. Whole pre-season, Tungo this, Tungo that. You gave him 2 games.
Yep.
Penrith had a bye early. I think it was round 3, so that could have been...
I think, remember that
They
was
did
the
have
talk
an
of the
early bye.
pre-season. It was, my play was that I thought they'd start fast, I'd have Tongo, and then I'd trade him at that bye.
Round 3 bye was the bye.
And I genuinely remember all pre-season saying that I would trade him in the bye, which I now look back and go, even then, my thinking of these buys, I put too much emphasis on them.
Yeah.
I realise now.
Yeah.
So you did bring in Bryce Cartwright, Izzy Katoa, one of you could be anythings, and Jacob Carraz, who you captained in round 4, I'm led to believe.
Did I?
Round 3, Carraz. So you brought him in and
Wow.
captained him the same week
Yeah, right.
for a grand score of 62.
Yeah, and I think it was a lucky 62 from memory. Remember, he started You didn't have him at the start
No,
of
I
the year?
didn't. I was terrified watching him every week.
Yeah, and
thankfully the doggies shit the bed, because if they kicked on and so they beat the Storm in round 2, I think it was, and if they kicked on and became that team,
yeah,
like Kiraz, he got injured, but
Yeah.
there was a period there early in the season where you're going, this bloke will be the top finishing CT dub for the Dogs in base stats.
Well, I remember getting to like round 3 or 4 just before he got injured, and we were like in my draft chat, we were generally going, Kiraz is going to be the draft of the season.
Yeah.
He's going to be a top 10 player, and he would have got picked round 8 or round 9.
He'll be an interesting one early next year because of how good he was early, and then towards the back end of the season, you saw his base come back up, because I think he was playing injured for a lot of that once he came back a bit early and all that. So he'll start at a decent price next year, and there's no reason why the output should be any different. The Doggies have to be improved. He'll be a sneaky early one next year.
Jeez, you wouldn't want to be the winger outside him trying to get the ball off him and Stephen Crichton. Bring a deck chair with you.
Yeah, you can watch on. Round 4.
Bryce Cartwright.
Go on.
Yeah, this is a big talking point for us.
Outstanding trading. Remember him and Matty Dury had both, I think, played like 80 the opening rounds. Sean Lane was out injured, and there were minutes to have their Isaiah Papali'i had gone, and everyone's going Dury versus Cartwright. Cartwright, mate, arguably cheapy, or probably Hopgood, but arguably cheapy of the year. Cardi finished the season with about a 63-point average. You cashed him out a little bit early. I mean, hindsight's a great thing, but at 446k, he's one of them blokes who easily could have been a staple of your team the entire year. Nonetheless, mate, that was a great move.
Yeah, I think most people went the other way to Dory.
Yeah.
He's a good player. I've just never seen it like other people have with him. So, but Bryce Cartwright, I will always admit, I'll get more wrong. I mean, I drafted Bryce Cartwright, pick number 2, the first time he went to the Gold Coast Titans. I dropped him in round 10. Unbelievable. And I didn't win a game until round 10 that year either. So shout out to Brycey boy. But I will always be a big Cartwright fan. And yeah, it was good to see that one play out the way that it did.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was a big talking point for us. I remember that was a big week for us.
You had, didn't you? Wasn't your first round pick that year, Big Shannon Boyd at the Titans?
I drove to draft night that year with Garth Brennan. Just the two of us. It's a good trip.
Round 4, this is where it gets interesting because you sold Kalen Ponga, James Tedesco, and you brought in Harry Grant and Reece Walsh. So 2 big names out, 2 big names in. Harry, I think he'd scored a couple of hundreds or at least 100, a couple of 90s before round 3. You brought him in round 4. And Reece Walsh, again, this is sort of where I think that was a very popular trade that week, Teddy to Walsh, and Walsh just kicked on.
Yeah, I think the Harry Grant play, I actually think you had captained him a few times in the first few weeks, and that was starting to worry me. So I think I brought Grant in there. And then the Reece Walsh one, I don't like bringing in guys in Supercoach that have to do a lot to score. I hate relying on guys to set up 3 tries and all that sort of shit. But Reece Walsh was just undeniable. Yeah. By that point, like you just couldn't leave him.
You did captain Harry Grant that week, again for 44.
That makes sense. And
Walsh the same week played the Dolphins and got a 84. So
yeah.
One of those sliding doors moments. But yeah, it was sort of after that where Walsh went on and scored 90s, 100s, doing plenty to do that. But it's just so focal in their attack.
Round 5 was a great trading week. Your second boost of the season. Dewey out, Garrick in. Sweet, happy days. It's the next 2. Tanner Boyd and Isaac Thompson out. Now, Tanner Boyd, anyone who held him for longer eked a bit of value out of him. He was actually half all right. The 2 that came in. Firstly, Nico Hines off the back of 180. And Joshy Schuster at 241k.
Oof. Did we gloss over the fact that Guru told people not to bring in Hines in round 4, was it?
That's right. He did tell people not to bring him in.
Now, I would challenge all of you to go back and watch the tape of me saying I don't think he will play. Because I think I copped it pretty unfairly this year, to be honest with you. I'll wear it, and that's fine.
That's fine.
But
numbers are here, black and white. 180.
I got into a little verbal last weekend with a guy on social media. I was pretty drunk by that point. But he, what did he spray me for? He sprayed me. He goes, "You fucked me with the Nico Hines thing. You told me he wasn't playing, and then you fucked me on the weekend because I thought Nathan Cleary was resting because of you." I just said,
"Oh my!
You press the button, brother. Yeah. You make your own decisions, kid.
Yeah,
don't
seriously.
You do your own thing." But yeah, the Nico Hines thing, it actually turned out to be probably the highlight of the season, I think.
Yeah, and also, if you're going to throw shade at us for getting a few things wrong in Supercoach, if we got everything right, no one would play Supercoach because we'd win overall every year by a mile because it mean we'd never get anything wrong.
Yeah.
You did bring in Nico for that round 5 game against the Warriors. He did score 102. So very quickly did he repay the trade. Had a bye round 6 though, so you weren't deterred by that. Very quickly, did you get rid of Tanner Boyd, someone that you said you wouldn't want down there at South East Tag?
Yeah. Can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah, mate.
Did we both trade in Schuster and Hines in the same week? I feel like I said that to you last week.
I reckon I waited till after the bye for Hines.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, I went before the bye. Yeah, that was a big talking point this year too, wasn't it? Because we were in fucking damage control after that 180.
Yes. So I waited. I think I waited a little bit longer. I trying to find my moves, but I didn't get him to round 7.
Okay.
Because of that bye, the bye, and then tough games. Remember, he had. Well,
Yeah.
I think one of them was the Roosters, who were meant to be tough. Yeah. So he had. Where are we? Anyway, carry on.
The next week, this is where it gets interesting again because the popular trade in round 6 was Hopgood to Hosking. I remember that was like the trade of the week. You kept Jermaine Hopgood, even though he was benched. And you brought in Hosking anyway, but you sold Teague Wilton. Also, Greg Marju, you traded in that week for Paul Alamotti. So some considerable upgrades there, given what both Hosking and Marju went on to do.
Yeah, I think Marju, you never went him, so that was a big advantage for
Season
me to have
defining.
him. Yep, season defining.
I didn't realise you went that early on him. That was huge.
Yeah, because he didn't play the first 2 weeks, Marju. I think he had a abductor or something that was wrong. Then I brought him in, and I remember the night we were in Cairns,
Round
which would
3.
have been round
Missed first 3.
First 3, did he? The night we were in Cairns, which would have been round 4, we were sitting
Raiders.
at that pub, and Hosking, he killed it that night against Parramatta, had a big score, and I had him in my draft side too, drafted him fucking early too, and I made the decision that night that Hosking was coming in very soon, and to be honest with you, I'm actually really disappointed with how Hosking's season played out. I thought he would be an all-timer this year. I thought he would lock down an edge, and I thought he'd be a 70-point back rower this season.
He had one of the greatest mid-ranges of all time potential there, at least in the back row.
I think he was a really good example of just showing how hard first grade is. No matter how tough you are, whatever, playing in the back row for 80 minutes consistently for that long takes a toll on your body. It takes years to get used to.
You know who the bloke that we thought Hosking was going to become, that bloke's name was Scott Sorensen.
Yeah, and he's in year 4, 5, 6, whatever it might be of his career. So I still think Hosking in the next few years is going to be a very, very relevant Supercoach player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did score 117 against the Eels, like you said there. But then, I think probably not so much a shot at Hosking, but more so, like you say there, Timmy, like a testament to how good both Liam Martin and Sorensen are. Obviously, Luke Garner, a popular Supercoach player to start the year as well, that I think you've looked to avoid by this point. Round 7, you traded Bryce Cartwright out. He did you a good job. You made a $211K profit there. You downgraded, I won't say downgrade in the sense of performance, but downgraded in a dollar sense to Timmy Williams himself. Phoenix Crossland came in round 7.
I can take no responsibility for that one. That was T. Williams himself that convinced me on that one, I think. Is that right?
I got you on that, my boy.
You brought him in, and the fixture didn't deter you. They had the Panthers that week. So it was purely a cash decision there.
And you know what? Even, obviously, I made the decision to bring him in, but I brought him in because of Tim. But even then, I still didn't think he would get anywhere near the heights he did. Just not even a chance. And mate, there was weeks there where I was playing him in my 17 when I was full strength, and he was scoring me 60s. He was incredible for us this year, Phoenix, especially during some of those bye rounds and shit, key moments. Yeah, he stood up in a lot of them for us.
And you jagged him. You held him a bit longer than I did, and it was pretty fruitful.
There was one round that I had him that I played him, and I think he scored 60
90, or even more.
Could have gone more, yeah. He had a very good game.
You didn't sell him to round 22, and you cashed out for a bit more than I did, plus a few extra good scores.
Yeah.
Mate, let's fast forward to the moment of the season. Round 9, Reece Walsh out, Clint Gutherson in. Yeah. Trebojevic out, Tom Trebojevic out, Tyrell Sloan.
One of these is not the same.
The most traded in player of the week. A bloke we both shit-canned in SuperCoach circles, all pre-season, all start of the season. You just couldn't resist getting in Tyrell Sloan.
He is a guy that I have shit canned from Classic to draft in everything his entire career. And I think sometimes we spoke about with your team last week, Timmy, that sometimes we can be too stubborn. I think it's one of my strengths that I tend not to be stubborn. I'm more than happy to make these moves despite what I say if I think it's the right play at that moment. And I genuinely thought he was going to go big over those 2 or 3 weeks. And I'll give you the hot tip, he did not.
Guru, the 2 weeks prior against the Raiders, 85 points, and then 90 against the Roosters. Everyone brought him in this week. Thank Christ.
Can I guess what he got?
Yep, round 9 against the Bulldogs at home at Wynn Stadium.
I want to say it was like 18 or something.
Bang on, 18.
It's just burned into the brain.
12 in base.
Yeah.
Round 10.
He got 12 in base.
Yeah.
And went overs.
Round 10, the West Tigers at Suncorp. A great surface for SuperCoach scoring.
35.
You wish. 20. Go on. Round 11 against the Cowboys, who were coming near the bottom of the ladder. 27. Following week, 29 against the Roosters. Following week, round 13, 25 against the Dolphins. You know the best thing about this in Tyrell Sloan? So he had a 5-round average when people brought him in of about 20. The next 2 weeks, Panthers in Penrith, 59. And then the Bunnies, who were top of the comp at the time, 82.
Yeah, he blew the Bunnies away that night. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the rest of the year, every time Tyrell Sloan did anything, scored a try, threw a good pass, my DMs would just blow up. It was fucking outrageous. But yeah, Sloan, he was. Did I bring him in twice or just the once?
Surely not.
Because your best bit of content for me across the year was there was a time when a fullback went down. So it might have been Teddy or someone. I can't remember who. And you just had, there's only one man we can call in a time like this, and you just had Tyrell Sloan in the Batman light in the sky.
That's right. Oh, fuck. And, mate, so many people messaged me thinking I'd actually brought him in that weekend too. But, yeah, I've always shit-canned him. Backed my gut in on that one. It didn't work out. But especially with fullbacks and everything, if you've got a gut feel, I think you've just got to go it. Mm-hmm. And that is the classic example. I fucked up Sloan. I think there's another fullback I mess up throughout the year. Or there is another fullback I mess up with throughout the year. But because I got Kohler in the back end, I hit 1 out of 3 there, but it was well worth it.
What about just amongst all of those pretty shitty scores there from Tyrell Sloan, you made the decision to cut him in round 11, so you just held him for 2 weeks. I want to talk to you about the player you brought in. I think this is
Before you do that,
go on.
So he had something like a real low negative break even when you did that. You bought him for $463K, ready to make some good cash. You then sold him. You sold him for $485K. So I think you made $20K. If my timeline is correct. But my memory was you lost money in the 2 weeks as well.
Mate, I thought I lost money. We almost lost sponsors on the podcast. It was all over the place. Cost us a fortune.
Sorry to cut you off, Roger.
All good. Just after one bad decision, here came a good one. Jareem Buller was the guy you traded Sloan to round 11. Yeah. So this was a real moment in your season, I know. And for those that didn't buy, it was another sliding doors moment. But Jareem Buller, you couldn't have expected what came from when you traded him in round 11, $283K.
Yeah, and this is, as I just said before, one of my strengths. I think is that I can ignore sometimes what my senses say and just back things in. Like, for me, a debutant playing fullback at the Tigers, there is red flags all over that with this guy, and there was the entire time. And I've got no idea how, but I actually had hardly ever seen him play before. I didn't really know he existed in the preseason. So then when he burst onto the scene...
because he had that gap when he was playing basketball, he wasn't playing footy 18 months before.
That would explain it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure why I decided. I can't remember my thought process, but I wouldn't have been happy making that decision, but thankfully I did.
Yeah, what was his thought process? Speed dial number 1. Hey, Tim, should I get Buller in or not? Yep. Okay, mate, thanks. You cashed out at a good time. You cashed him out in round 19 at $646K. I think when I did it, he was in the 5, so you got out at a pretty damn good time.
Yeah.
Because he had a few barriers.
Yeah, he did have a few barriers, but geez, I remember there was a show that we came in here and we went, is he a keeper?
Yeah.
Could he be? Like, there was a period of time there where he was doing some amazing things. But yeah, I think I nailed Buller from start to finish.
It was the Tigers' bed shit and being no good and get the wooden spoon. Imagine him in a top 8 side.
Yeah, it'd be scary. Yeah.
I can't wait now that there's SuperCoach NBL. Guru will be scouting the local leagues in Queensland basketball for the next could be anything. Rugby league back on the agenda now. Round 12, you went to Billy Smith. I know you're another one of those guys that you've been big on over the years.
Yeah.
Probably went, I'm not going to say early, but what you got back from Billy was probably at a period of the season there where he just couldn't seem to put consistent scores back to back to back.
What I got from Billy is exactly what I deserved.
Yeah.
100%, as it tends to be with Billy every year. I think I've owned him in draft 3 years in a row now at some point. I watched him play his return game for the North Sydney Bears. And I think I spoke to you about this, Timmy, the week it happened. I watched him play and he looked okay, but defensively he was in fucking shambles. And I thought there's not a hope in hell he's going to get back into this side. So I was actually very shocked when he got named, but I will admit I am a sucker for one B. Smith of the Billy variety.
I think what he's produced the last couple of weeks is what you were hoping to get.
There's something there.
Yeah. Remember, he had a break even of something like minus 50 or minus 80 or something at the time. You end up selling him for about a 70k profit 4 or 5 weeks later.
And you know what? If you would have made me guess how much I got out of him, I would have said less than 70k. So
you sold him in round 20 for 360, so 70k.
Yeah. I think we'll be having a very similar conversation about Billy for a few more years.
Round 13, mate. I mentioned a certain Knights players being season defining earlier. This was the big one. Kalen Ponga, round 13 at 511k. You got him a bit earlier than I remembered.
Yeah.
So round 13, mate, that's pretty well when he went on his tear, didn't he? With his concussion history, that was a wonderful play.
Yeah, there was a few that I got on this year that I traded them in and they were really good trades and they were a little bit pottish at the time, but then the week after, everyone else traded them in. It happened with KP, happened with Jack DeBellin when everyone sort of got on JDB, and I think Corey Horsburgh was the other one as well. 3 guys that I had in my draft team, which is why I was watching them so closely. But yeah, the KP one was huge, especially when you made the decision, which
to pod him.
There's another 160,000 people out there I'm versing, but you are the person I watched the closest. So when you decided not to, it was it was a big move, KP.
To be fair, he came and he went 77, 92, 95, 47 his first 5 games when you bought him.
Yep.
First 4 games, I should say. Then he went bongs with 180 against the Dogs, 137 against the Tigers. The rest is history. That being said, because he was so lowly priced, even with those scores and the few 90s in there, he was mid-600s by that time, and you'd cashed in. And by that time, I'm sitting there on mid-6, nearly 700k, head knocks, everyone's owning him. But yeah, great play.
It's an interesting time to buy him as well. They obviously played round 13. That's potentially a big reason why you did buy him. But they had the buy in 14, and then like we said last week when speaking about Timmy's team, there was every chance he got the Origin call-up, be it starting fullback or off the bench. So I'm sure there was temptation to even sell him in that period, even though you just bought him.
Yeah, for sure. But I was a big believer in, as I said, I wanted to get him in draft, and I think I had pick number 1, which meant my second pick was pick 28 or whatever, and I thought no one's going to go near KP with concussions, playing 5'8", no one will go near him. And my best mate Jeremy, who pretty much bases all of his picks off what I say on the fucking podcast, he took him pick.
It's annoying,
27.
isn't it?
Please, want to introduce you to my friend, mate? Jesus Christ. Should I get Guru on the third one as well, just to be safe? Save 2 trips up there. So I was very high on KP from the preseason, and then it was funny. That game against Canterbury where he exploded. You came back from Europe a few weeks after that.
Yes.
And I remember you said something to me. You said something to me like, "Oh fuck, thanks for letting me know he was goal kicking," assuming that. I think you assumed that Jackson Hastings had told me.
That's right.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea until they ran out, and then he picked up the tee, and I was like, "Oh,
that's right.
Okay, that's a little bonus."
It doesn't help, but and he kicked 11 from 11.
Yeah.
Because that was the
pretty much all from his bad side.
Yeah, because that was the breaking point of low break even, was about to make good cash, soft matchups where that was the key week that killed me. And I remember a lot of it was that he wasn't kicking, and I was kind of like, not kicking, I can cop it.
Yeah.
Then when he came in, not only did he kick, but he kicked 11 from 11, and I just went, shit. He would have gone up a ton of cash, went 180, and he was goal kicking.
Yeah. And that was the same, that was the week I traded him into my draft side. And I think all the boys in my comp assumed that Jacko had told me he was goal kicking. I had no idea until he ran out. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be delicious. Little did I know, 11 from 11 from the left-hand touch line. Yeah. It was incredible.
Mate, and one of the best ones, the following... Oh, there's a couple of good ones here, actually. I'll start with one. You departed with Sonny Luke, your beloved Sonny, for $228K. Again, you got out... Well, you started the season with him, so I won't say you got out at a good time, but before others who had him all season... Jacob Little came in. I took the piss out of you. Everyone took the piss out of you. 37 points in 49 minutes against the Panthers. I think you even admitted, what have I done? What were you thinking at that time?
If you rolled the tape back to the preseason, I actually nominated Jacob Little as a guy to keep an eye on during the Origin period, solely because of their draw and their run and everything like that, and just their squad in general. I traded in Jacob Little. It was the first game against Penrith? Yeah. Is that what you said? Yeah. I remember he was a trade that he was one of those guys that I woke up Sunday morning and I didn't think I was going to make any trade that day. And I don't know, just the longer the day went on, I got itchier and itchier. And I actually had him in draft as well. There's a real common theme here. And made a last minute decision to bring in Jacob Little. And I can't really remember why I did it. I'm not sure.
Bored?
Potentially. I feel like there was more of a domino effect to it, but it wouldn't have... I don't know why I did it, because it wouldn't have... Maybe I saw the Origin period coming and I knew I'd be without Harry Grant, so I just thought at least I'll have a hooker playing.
Like, I get the itchy feet trade when it's like a high upside goal. Like, I had the itchy feet big time, and when I got Dallin in for that 120-odd matchup, because you're like, oh, if I miss this, it could be their 180. You got Jacob a Little.
What round was it?
14. So it was like the week after. Maybe you're a little bit short on numbers because there are a bunch out that week. That might have been it.
There was a reason why I did it, to pull the trigger that allowed me to do more stuff the week after. Yeah. It must have been something along those lines. But from memory, I don't think he did terribly over the next few weeks.
No. That's what I was getting to. Yeah, that's what I wanted you after that game thoughts.
I was rattled as shit after that.
He went on to have a 4-game average through Origin of like 60 points. So.
Yeah, he scored a couple of tries and whatnot. I can't even remember how many times
he scored, then had assist. Yeah, so he did all right for you in the end.
So that was round 14. You actually used a boost to bring him and a couple of others in.
It was a boost to get Little in?
That was your boost. That was your...
That's fucking rank.
That was your last boost. Yeah. Interesting. Johnny Bateman and Sifa Talakai were the other two that came in. I think Bateman did a job. He did a job round 19. I remember he was a number. But Talakai maybe just bought into that Sharks run. It looked so good. On paper.
Sifa. I've always been a huge Talakai fan. Yeah. Like from Mascot Jets under 14s, huge fan. So Talakai, that one might seem a little bit rogue, but that's very me. I love Talakai. I'm actually thinking, I wonder if the weekend I brought in Little, if I potentially was trying to get a VC score and I didn't want Sonny Luke to stink it up. So I maybe on the Sunday afternoon brought in. Maybe that was what it was.
Potentially. But
anyway, yes. The Sifa Talakai one, that was actually, there was a little bit of spite in that, which I like to do occasionally with Timmy, because we'd spoken about him in the weeks before that, remember? A few, not bit, but like more so like when we're having a coffee or whatever, we'd go, oh, love to bring in Talakai right now, blah, blah, blah. And I just knew you didn't have him. So I remember there being a bit of spite to that one, which I live for. Absolutely.
Mate, you fast forward to round 19, and these are the kind of trades where, like, I'll get your thoughts on it, and it might go a different direction, but where I try not to naff and get these battlers and blokes who every chance they won't be there end of the season. You went Buller out, Quai Ward in. You went Schuster up to Mulitalo, so it was obviously a bit of cash to fund that, but Quai Ward, who ended up being like, he hardly really played for the rest of the season. And from round 19, you've brought in... Obviously, you thought... I know you rated him as a player, and you're thinking maybe he'd come out for the Broncos and he might get a few more starts, but a dangerous move. What was your thinking there?
To be honest with you, it didn't play out the way I thought it would, but it ended up being better. So I brought him in. He played that one game. He scored a try.
Round 19, so the Origin bye, third major bye round.
Yeah, so he played the Sunday afternoon. It was funny. I actually... All week I was trading him Blake Wilson, which no one else was going near, and then Quai Ward got named, and I've always liked him, so I brought him in. I think Blake Wilson actually ended up scoring 100 that week.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he scored a few hundreds on the run home as well. And I think in the last week he might have done okay too. Might be talking.
He scored the real late try in it.
Scored the late try, yeah. So looking back on it, I wish I would have gone Wilson because it wouldn't have cost me too much. But Kwai Ward, he came in, he scored 60 odd in that game. He scored a try. To be honest with you, he actually looked really average in that game. I took an L on that, but he scored well in that game, so I got the 60 points. But he played bad enough throughout the rest of it that he actually didn't play again.
Yeah.
So it actually turned out to be an okay enough because it freed up cash to be able to make other big moves. So a classic example of it worked out okay, but it didn't work out as I planned. But you need a few things to fall your way sometimes.
Roo, let's fast forward a few more weeks. And I mentioned earlier about nuffs and how much I hate them in SuperCoach. Yep. We go through to round 21. I just mentioned you just brought in Kwai Ward. You'd not been burned by it, but, you know, depth becomes a bit of a question mark. You have a little nuff in there. Jacob Little out. Roo Nagatakora, 200K, left you with no backup hooker with 6 or 7 rounds to go. You had trades up the sleeve to cover it. It obviously facilitated a trade-in of Campbell Graham, which didn't obviously pan out, but Roo's the one that I want to toy it. That was, no.
Yeah, and I think this is the big thing that differentiates us as SuperCoach players. I will always be happy to nuff players, always, because I think it frees up opportunity to spend more money on big name players that you want. And I think depth is important. There's no doubt about that. But I just think you need to also just be getting the big guns that you need.
I can get around that idea at like centre wing or 2RF where you've got coverage. You had no coverage at hooker.
But I had the trades. So
you did have the trades.
If I didn't have the trades, completely different conversation.
Yeah.
But up until the last week, if Harry Grant was ruled out, it would have been fine. I could have just made a move on him and it would have been sweet.
I wanted Harry to get ruled out any time before that final round. It would have changed my season because I had Brayley in backup.
Yeah, you had Brayley, yeah. But I also, and this is something that I do probably more so in draft, I also just look at it and go, okay, hooker, I don't think it's as important position as what everyone else carries on with anymore. I'm very much so off the hooker train. If you've been following my draft content for years, I've been saying it for ages, and I think Classic is very fucking similar. Even Harry Grant, to be fair, he went bigger this year than what I thought he would. But, mate, there was weeks there where Jacob Little was outscoring Harry fucking Grant. Like, if it meant I ran without a hooker for a week or two, by that point I'd realised that these buys and everything, they weren't actually having as much impact as what people were expecting. So if it meant that I was without a hooker for a week, which I wouldn't be because I had trades, it didn't worry me in the slightest, and it allowed me to free up cash to make big moves later. So I reckon we're going to have a few of these conversations over the years.
There's a real pattern there with trading in a quote-unquote enough with someone else, like a big gun. So you did it, like we said there, with Campbell Graham. Rewind on that same week as you brought in Kai Ward, you brought in Mulatalo. I want to take you
enough.
Yeah, take you back to round. Take you back to round 18. Joey Tarpanay alongside Ty Munro.
Yep.
Munro, you actually traded him in, and I can't believe we've missed this. You traded out Nick Meaney, who you traded in just 1 week prior.
I was waiting for Meaney to come, yeah.
And you captained him.
Yeah.
So we've glossed over the fact your worst week, probably your worst trade, your worst captain, Nick Meaney, round 17, and you sold him round 18.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a 1 week play. I wanted to make a big splash that afternoon and go for a big captain score. I can't remember why. My vice captain didn't work out, and something either I fucked it up or someone got ruled out or something, and I just wanted to go for a big play. Nick Meaney, by the way, also one that I have never been overly high on. His entire career, even when he signed with Melbourne, I wasn't huge on it. He's proved me wrong there, 100%. But yeah, brought in Nick Meaney. I want to say 41.
Bang on, 41.
Yeah, haunts me.
I mean, it looked a good game on paper at home to Manly, who at the time they were floundering a little bit.
Yeah.
So I can see the logic there. I think Storm won well. He just didn't do anything.
And I came in with the full plan to, not the plan, but I came in knowing that there is every chance I trade him out next week.
Wow.
Because I was happy just to take a punt on that one big play that no one else was going to do. No one else was going to captain him, and I was happy to take that risk. Didn't pay off, but I'm happy to live and die by the sword.
Roo, fast forward to round 23. Val Holmes suspended for the rest of the season. I was absolutely devastated to see that as a bloke who didn't own him. Mate, you went with Dane Gagai. Yeah. This is one of like, we spoke about it for basically from about mid-season, but particularly after the Origin period about his numbers and how the lack of attack he got. He finished the season with a 72-point average. He scored 3 tries. Based 40 per game. And what did I say? You bought him in round 23. 70, 97, 56, 78, then was rested round 27. That is an unbelievable season.
Unbelievable season, to be honest with you. I was disappointed.
Yeah, because the attack didn't come.
The attack didn't come. Nah. And even, mate, there was even, I think you just read out a 55 and a 58.
70, 97, 56, 78.
Yeah, right. So I remember that 56 just sitting there going, fuck, that's disappointing. Because I was expecting 70s every week, which he did a lot of the time. Dane Gagai, I think at that point he was 1 or 2% owned. He got a little bit higher as the season went on, but I don't think he ever got too high.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the risk you take. I remember saying to Jackson Hastings about 5 weeks out, I said, if you guys are safe in the last round, do you reckon you're a chance to rest guys? And I remember he sort of said, maybe, but I think we'd rather keep our momentum. And at that point, I sort of went, okay, I'm happy to go get guy. I'm happy that I've got KP, Marcio, all these fellas. Didn't play out that way, obviously, which is how it works.
It did in the sense, though, that like KP was injured, Hastings was injured. Gagai, being a veteran, he was the only one who got the rest.
He was, yeah. But I mean, I
was crying out for Marju to get... Oh, yeah. So his tackle breaks those last 4 games from round 23 onwards, 9, 12, 5, 13.
It'll sound stupid, but it was very like Andrew Fafita-esque. He would just get the ball turned under and just go, make 2 metres, but break 8 tackles. And you just go gun.
It's probably forgotten about as well because he was doing that great stuff for SuperCoach, but he wasn't finishing the tries. He wasn't making the line breaks. I just look here, Dom Young, 31 line breaks. How many of those passes would have come from Dane Gagai?
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing as well. There was a number of times towards the back end of the season where he would throw these incredible passes, Dane Gagai, where he would hold the ball for half a second and create space. And quite often they don't give the attacking stats for that, which I get, and it's how SuperCoach works. But Christ, I reckon if you had like a rugby league mind sitting there scoring instead of a SuperCoach mind, his points would have gone through the fucking roof. Yeah. Thankfully, if it wasn't going to him, a lot of the time it was going to KP, so I was getting them anyway. But there was a lot of points that Tyson Gamble picked up this year that I personally thought Dane Gagai should have got.
Guru, lots of people ask me, sit there and watch the podcast and run into them over a beer at times. They go, what's Roo like as a bloke? He's a good fella, like comes across a bit of a knob and all that. I say...
a bit?
Yeah, just a bit of a knob.
You've nailed it.
I look after you and I try and make a case and try to put you in a good light, but, I'm not a liar. I'm not going to, completely... Anyway. And people say, okay, that's cool. Like, he just comes across as a flog. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's fair. And I paint in his good light. And there was a moment in the season where people watching the podcast went, okay, there it is. Round 25, you sold the prodigal son in your life, Jermaine Hopgood. And they all just went, okay, that's Guru's true colours, I see.
There was, especially on social media and everything. I thought it'd do well, but that did better than what I ever expected. There was more people that viewed that stupid Hopgood apology letter than play SuperCoach that week. It was insane. And the amount of people that messaged me about it, blah, 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 and giving me shit about it. And I'd say, oh, you're going to hold him? They're like, I don't play SuperCoach. I was like, what the fuck? What do you care for then? People just absolutely love that Hopgood shit this year. And you sold him a few weeks before for Cam Murray. Who did I sell him for?
Eli Katoa.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming.
Great trade.
Yeah.
Banked 180K, a few points. Would have been a particularly good trade if Eli Katoa didn't get rested round 27, but...
Yeah, that would have been a huge one. That was much as I love Jermaine Hopgood and everything like that, minutes were becoming a worry. Had the bye in round 27. I knew that I wanted to get rid of all my Eels before round 27 so I could make other moves that week. That was just Yeah, we saw people made it out like it was a bigger trade than what it was, but I thought it was a very common sense decision.
I thought, so I did the exact same thing a few weeks earlier. I thought it made complete sense.
Yeah, there was no point getting to the end, getting to round 27, having any Parramatta players. If you did, you're a moron.
Yeah. Riser, now I'll let you introduce round 26, and I might just switch off for the rest of the show because
Do I have to?
we don't.
really have
Mate,
to?
We're running this shit, so we don't have to do anything.
All right,
I
pack
will
her up.
sit here and talk to myself if I have to. It's 80% of my career.
It's not the only thing you might do to yourself. Round 26. All right, we'll address it. DCE and Tolatau Kohler in. You sold Nico Hines and Latrell Mitchell, who had a bye that week for South. So Manly up against the Bulldogs as it was.
Yep.
You had plenty of cash to play with. You sold 1.4 million, and to still have 2 trades and that much money in disposal at that time of the year, this is what you were talking about, rounds 16, 17. You were preparing for a week like this.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we knew it was going to be carnage in the last few weeks. If you didn't, you're probably lying, to be completely honest with you. And yeah, I wanted, obviously depth was important and my depth was good enough. But I think just having trades for the back end is so important. And, there was running jokes. I think with 8 weeks ago, I had 12 trades or whatever. And, I still got to the last week and only had 1 left. But the moves I was able to make, I think from about round 23 onwards, Tinos, Teddies, Katoas, these sort of guys. Obviously, Kohler and DCE with a cherry on top. But, I've had seasons like this before where I've had a lot of trades coming to the back end. If you don't make the right moves, it doesn't fucking matter.
And the other thing about it, it's one thing to have trades and think, it's cool and you get an extra play that week, but when you do it for the final 2 rounds, which this year emphasised more than ever. Now, this was an exception in that Cole, as I said, had the highest score of the year in the round 27. But because it's not a long-term play and you go, this matchup and this matchup, you go 2 weeks to go or 1 week to go, who has the absolute best matchups? And you've looked at them and gone, the Tigers and the Doggies, who have thrown in the towel for the year, they've got nothing to play for. Manly can be flat track bullies at times. It just had big Manly score written all over it. Yep. Who's just gone to fullback? Kohler. So not just the trades, but you get the best matchups of the week. Yeah, for sure. And to be honest with you, I had DC, I had Kohler, which was fantastic. And I look back now and I actually, in the episode leading into the grand final, where we're talking about our last trades, I mentioned it in 1 sentence and I didn't give it any more thought. And I know it's easy in hindsight, but when I had DC and Kohler, why I didn't go Olakau'atu is beyond me. And I said it 1 sentence and I didn't give it any more thought. Keep in mind, I had Olakau'atu for the first 6 weeks, so I was always high on him. And I just sit there. And, I went AJ Brimson. I think he scored 80, so I think it ended up being a 100-point difference, but that could have been the difference between 1%. Imagine if you had them 3 that final round. And I look back and go, I know it's easy in hindsight, but why didn't I? If DC was going to have a good game, shocked me Olakau'atu was going to have a good game. You love a combination. Yeah, love a combination. It's almost the perfect storm, and maybe I don't know how much emphasis we put on this time next year. But to get a team like Manly playing, at home or in daytime footy against the Dogs, we haven't mentioned it, but would you have got Garrick? Because Garrick was injured round 25. You got Kohler round 26. Do you think you would have done DCE and Garrick if he wasn't injured? You know what? I don't know if I would have done DCE because then Garrick would have been goal kicking. Yeah, but I would have gone Garrick. Yeah, okay. For sure. I love Garrick as a footballer. I would have been more than happy to have him. Look at those, choosing the best matchups. I had 2 trades going into round 26. I got Drinky and Ches. Yeah. You got Kohler, Ches, and Brimo. So just having those easy matchups to type, bang, bang, bang. And that was the only thing that put me off Drinkwater was that Penrith matchup. And, I went into, who'd they play in round 26? Cows? When he scored Dolphins, yeah. So I went into that thinking, okay, if I can just get him for sub 140, 150, I think I'll be able to win this trade next week because, I think Drinky in the last week scored 40 against the Panthers. Max. That's pretty good for him against the Panthers. I was expecting heaps
20,
less, to be honest with you. You got 29, so. Yeah. But it's hard because it's easy for us to sit here and say, Kohler had the matchup and that was the play, and it turned out to be correct. But how many times throughout this season did matchups just do nothing for us? Yeah. Nothing whatsoever.
Nick Meaney, round 17.
Nick Meaney, yeah, that's one example. But even like Drinkwater to start the season.
Oh, yeah.
How high were we all on the Cowboys and Reece Robson and Val Holmes and all these guys because they had this unbelievable draw and it just didn't happen. The Bunnies post-Origin, their whole run home.
Exactly right. And mate, this whole roasting situation, it's all good and well because I had those Manly boys. But if they didn't do well, it's the dumbest thing imaginable. It becomes bigger than Nico Hines all of a sudden. So it can turn so quickly, and you're relying on two teams that are waiting for Mad Monday.
Yeah.
But that can be Supercoach gold sometimes.
To me, this probably comes back to your draft history because you've picked on matchups and not necessarily who you should have, again, Hines and Cleary, who you should finish the season with probably on paper, Sean Johnson, Hughes, whatever. DC, he's always fourth, fifth run in that halfback ladder, but he was the one really that we all should have been playing with.
And and that's why I like to have trades towards the back end because then realistic Classic turns into draft.
That's my biggest takeaway from this whole situation is if you can make up ranks in, or not lose ranks in Origin, it's probably less important than what you can do with your trades in the back end of the year, make up literally thousands of ranks in 2 weeks.
And I think and it hasn't come up at all because I antipoded them all year, just avoiding those New Zealand Warriors.
How'd you go, talking of antipoding, the Dolphins? Because there was a real point in the season where Hammer and Asako were either you buy them or you've missed the boat. Did you get on to either of them?
Neither of them. We never had Osako, which is funny because I had Osako in draft.
Yeah.
I picked him like round 16 and he was a top 10 player. He was absolutely fucking killing it. And I just, the thing that worried me with Osako and why I didn't get on him was because Branko Lee stopped playing. And I thought without Branko, this guy can't get as much good ball. And you know what? He didn't, but it didn't matter.
Well, who had Cody
He just
Nikorima
finished everything.
at
It was
fullback?
unbelievable. Yeah, it was wild.
Like, no one would have seen that.
Yeah. And I think, I think for a long period of time, I sat there and went, Osako's one of those guys that if you got him, you're probably not actually a great Supercoach player. You just got a little bit lucky. That was my thought process for a long time. But you've got to give credit to guys.
Took 26 weeks to change our mind.
Yeah, 100%.
By round 27, he's just going to ton again.
He's just going to do it again. He's going to keep doing it. So, and, mate, I had him in draft. I was a believer, but not as much as other people were. So full credit to people that made that move because sometimes you just got to back in the hot hand.
Boys, I think we'll wrap that up for the roast of the Roo. How'd you go, mate? Enjoy that?
I did, yeah. That was pretty good. Obviously a good season and whatnot, so...
Rise up next week. You're up, mate. How are you prepared? I cannot wait to get to your final trade of the year.
Yeah, look, it's going to be the talking point. The good thing for me is it's going to take 26 weeks to get to that point. So 25,
might go in reverse.
25, perhaps.
We'll break you before that point.
Yeah, I know. I'm fingers crossed. Not too rattled by that point.
Just to give you a heads up too, Timmy, this bloke is a bullshit artist. I've got a big bone to pick with him next week.
I don't think you need to pick it with me. I think there's someone else that you need to pick it with.
Pretender over there. He's not one of us.
Looking forward. That will be next week, the roast of a riser. Of course, reach out to Blue Wealth Property. Let us know if you need links to that. Personal message, Guru or myself. Thanks to Kempy, Bloke in a Bar, as always. So let's wrap it up. Cheers for tuning in.
Guru back to back.